All right, good morning, everybody. We are beginning today with the Vishnu Mahapurana, Book 5, Chapter 12. All right, just starting right in. After Gokula had been saved from the elevation of saved by the elevation of the mountain, Krishna's lifting of the mountain Govardhana, Indra became desirous of beholding this Krishna. The conqueror of his foes, Indra, accordingly mounted his vast elephant Airavata and came to Govardhana, where the king of the Devas beheld the mighty Damodara tending cattle and assuming the person of a cowherd. And although the preserver of the whole world was surrounded by the sons of the herdsmen, above his head he saw Garuda, the king to birds, invisible to mortals, spreading out his wings to shade the head of Hari. Alighting from his elephant and addressing him apart from others, Shakra being another name of Indra, his eyes widening with pleasure, thus spoke to Madhusudana. Hear, Krishna, the reason why I have come hither, why I have approached you, for you could not otherwise conceive it. You, who are the supporter of all, have descended upon earth to relieve her of her burden. In resentment of my obstructed rights, I sent the clouds to deluge Gokula, and they have done this evil deed. You, by raising up the mountain, have preserved the cattle, and of a verity I am much pleased, O hero, with thy wondrous deed. The object of the gods is now methinks accomplished, since with thy single hand you hast raised aloft this chief of mountains. What he means by the object of the gods is now accomplished being the purification and lightening of the load of Bhumi Devi for which they prayed. In other words, that he is convinced that Krishna is indeed the avatar of Vishnu who has come for that purpose. Indra goes on, I have now come by desire of the cows, grateful for their preservation, in order to install you as Upendra, and as the Indra of the cows, you shall be called Govinda. And a traditional commentator on the Vishnu Purana adds that Indra has come by desire of the cattle, delegated by the cow of plenty, Kamadhenu, and other celestial kine, inhabitants of Goloka, the heaven of cows. Having thus said, Mahendra took a ewer from his elephant Airavata, and with the holy water it contained, performed the regal ceremony of aspersion. In other words, performed the Vedic coronation rite, coronating Krishna as king of cows. The cattle, as the rite was celebrating, deluged the earth with their milk. When Indra had, by direction of the kine, inaugurated Krishna, the husband of Shachi, again Indra, Shachi is Indra's wife, said to Krishna affectionately, I have thus performed what the cows enjoined me. Now, illustrious being, hear what farther I propose with a view to facilitate your task. A portion of me has been born as Arjuna, the son of Pritha. Let him ever be defended by you, and he will assist you in bearing thy burden. He is to be cherished by you, Madhusudana, like another self. To this Krishna replied, I know thy son, who has been born in the race of Bharata, and I will befriend him as long as I continue upon earth. As long as I am present, invincible Shakra, no one shall be able to subdue Arjuna in fight. When the great demon Kansa has been slain, and Arishta, Keshin, Kuvalayapida, Naraka, and other fierce Daityas shall have been put to death, there will take place a great war, in which the burden of the earth will be removed. Now therefore depart, and be not anxious on account of thy son, for no foe shall triumph over Arjuna whilst I am present on earth. For his sake I will restore to Kunti all her sons, with Yudhishthira at their head, unharmed, when the Bharata war is at an end. Upon Krishna seeking to speak, and the way Krishna phrased that there was very important. All her sons with Yudhishthira at their head. In other words, all her sons from Yudhishthira on. Krishna, while he didn't make a sound like this, the way he phrased it was very careful to exclude her firstborn, Karna, who will die in the war. Upon Krishna ceasing to speak, he and Indra mutually embraced, and the latter, mounting his elephant Airavata, returned to Svarga. Krishna, with the cattle and the herdsmen, went his way to Vraja, where the wives of the Gopas watched for his approach. Chapter 13. After Shakra had departed, the cowherds said to Krishna, whom they had seen holding up Govardhana, "We have been preserved together with our cattle from a great peril by your supporting the mountain above us. But this is very astonishing for child's play, unsuitable to the condition of a herdsman, and all thy actions are those of a god. Tell us what is the meaning of all this. Kaliya has been conquered in the lake, Pralamba has been killed, Govardhana has been lifted up. Our minds are filled with amazement. Assuredly we repose at the feet of Hari, O you of unbounded might. For having witnessed thy power, we cannot believe you to be a man. Thy affection, Keshava, for our women and children, and for Vraja, the deed that you have wrought, which all the gods would have attempted in vain. Thy boyhood and thy prowess, thy humiliating birth amongst us, are contradictions that fill us with doubt whenever we think of them. Yet reverence be to you, whether you be a god or a demon or a Gandharva or whatever we may deem you, for you are our friend." When they had ended, Krishna remained silent for some time as if hurt and offended, and then replied to them, "Herdsmen, if you are not ashamed of my relationship, if I have merited your praise, what occasion is there for you to engage in any such discussion concerning me? If you have any regard for me, if I have deserved your praise, then be satisfied to know that I am your kinsman. I am neither Deva, nor Yaksha, nor Gandharva, nor Danava. I have been born your relative, and you must not think differently of me." Upon receiving this answer, the Gopas held their peace and went into the woods, leaving Krishna apparently displeased. But Krishna, observing the clear sky bright with the autumnal moon, and the air perfumed with the fragrance of the wild water lily, in whose buds the clustering bees were murmuring their songs, felt inclined to join with the gopis in sport. Accordingly, he and Rama commenced singing sweet, low strains in various measures, such as the women loved, and they, as soon as they heard the melody, quitted their homes and hastened to meet the foe of Madhu. One damsel gently sang an accompaniment to his song, another attentively listened to his melody, one calling out upon his name, then shrunk abashed, whilst another, more bold and instigated by affection, pressed close to his side. One, as she sallied forth, beheld some of the seniors of her family, and dared not venture, contenting herself with meditating on Krishna with closed eyes and entire devotion, by which immediately all acts of merit were effaced by rapture, and all sin was expiated by regret at not beholding him. And others again, reflecting upon the cause of the world in the form of the Supreme Brahman, obtained by their sighing final emancipation. Thus surrounded by the gopis, Krishna thought lovely the moonlight night of autumn, propitious to the rasa dance. The rasa dance, as you know, is of course the circle dance of mixed, interspersed men and women holding each other's hands, revolving in a circle and singing together. Traditionally, the maximum number of members of the circle is 64 dancers. 32 men, 32 women is how it's traditionally done. Or it can be done with any lower number, but it's not supposed to go higher. Many of the gopis imitated the different actions of Krishna, and in his absence they wandered through Vrindavan, representing his person. "I am Krishna," cries one, "behold the elegance of my movements." "I am Krishna," exclaims another, "listen to my song." "Vile Kaliya, stay, for I am Krishna," is repeated by a third, slapping her arms in defiance. A fourth calls out, "Herdsmen, fear nothing, the danger of the storm is over, for lo, I lift up Govardhana for your shelter." And a fifth proclaims, "Now let the herds graze where they will, for I have destroyed Dhenuka." Thus, in various actions of Krishna, the gopis imitated him, whilst away from him, and beguiled their sorrow by mimicking his sports. Looking down upon the ground, one damsel called to her friend as the light down upon her body, meaning her body hair, stood erect with joy, and the lotuses of her eyes expanded. As she said, "See, here are the marks of Krishna's feet as he has gone alone sportively, and left the impressions of the banner, the thunderbolt, and the goad," which are marks physically present on the soles of Krishna's feet. What lovely maiden has been his companion, inebriate with passion, as her irregular footmarks testify. Here Damodara has gathered flowers from on high, for we see alone the impressions of the tips of his feet. Here a gopi has sat down with him, ornamented with flowers, fortunate in having propitiated Vishnu in a prior existence. Having left her in an arrogant mood because he had offered her flowers, the son of Nanda has gone by this road, for see, unable to follow him with equal steps, his associate has here tripped along upon her toes, and holding his hand, the damsel has passed, as is evident from the uneven and intermingled footsteps. But the rogue has merely taken her hand and left her neglected, for here the paces indicate the path of a person in despair. Undoubtedly, he promised that he would quickly come again, for here are his own footsteps returning with speed. Here he has entered the thick forest, impervious to the rays of the moon, and his steps can be traced no farther. Hopeless then of beholding Krishna, the gopis returned, and repaired to the banks of the Yamuna, where they sang his songs. And presently they beheld the preserver of the three worlds, with a smiling aspect, hastening towards them, on which one exclaimed, "Krishna, Krishna," unable to articulate anything else. Another affected to contract her forehead with frowns, as drinking with the beads of her eyes the lotus of the face of Hari. Another, closing her eyelids, contemplated internally his form, as if engaged in an act of devotion. Then Madhava, coming amongst them, conciliated some with soft speeches, some with gentle looks, and some he took by the hand, and the illustrious deities sported with them in the stations of the dance. As each of the gopis, however, attempted to keep in one place, close to the side of Krishna, the circle of the dance could not be constructed, and he therefore took each by the hand, and when their eyelids were shut by the effects of such touch, the circle was formed. Then proceeded the dance to the music of their clashing bracelets, and songs that celebrated in suitable strain the charms of the autumnal season. Krishna sang the moon of autumn, a mine of gentle radiance, but the gopis repeated the praises of Krishna alone. At times one of them, wearied by the revolving dance, threw her arms, ornamented with tinkling bracelets, round the neck of the destroyer of Madhu. Another, skilled in the art of singing his praises, also embraced him. The drops of perspiration from the arms of Hari were like fertilizing rain, which produced a crop of down upon the temples of the gopis. Krishna sang the strain that was appropriate to the dance. So a crop of down upon the temples of the gopis is a poetic way of referring to their braided hair falling loose as it gets tousled and disarrayed in the dance. Krishna sang the strain that was appropriate to the dance. The gopis repeatedly exclaimed, "Bravo, Krishna," to his song. When he was leading, they followed him. When returning, they encountered him. And whether he went forwards or backwards, they ever attended on his steps. Whilst frolicking thus with the gopis, they considered every instant without him a myriad of years, and prohibited in vain by their husbands, fathers, brothers, they went forth at night after night, to sport with Krishna, the object of their affection. Thus the illimitable being, the benevolent remover of all imperfections, assumed the character of youth amongst the females of the herdsmen of Vraja, pervading their natures and that of their lords by his own essence, all diffusive like the wind. For even as in all creatures the elements of ether, fire, earth, water, and air are comprehended, so also is he everywhere present and in all. Chapter 14. One evening, whilst Krishna and the gopis were amusing themselves in the dance, the demon Arishta, disguised as a savage bull, came to the spot after having spread alarm throughout the station. His color was that of a cloud charged with rain. He had vast horns, and his eyes were like two fiery suns. As he moved, he plowed up the ground with his hoofs. His tongue was repeatedly licking his lips. His tail was erect. The sinews of his shoulders were firm, and between them rose a hump of enormous dimensions. His haunches were soiled with ordure, and he was a terror to the herds. His dewlap hung low, and his face was marked with scars from butting against the trees. Terrifying all the kine, the demon who perpetually haunts the forests in the shape of a bull, destroying hermits and ascetics, advanced. Beholding an animal of such a formidable aspect, the herdsmen and their women were exceedingly frightened and called aloud on Krishna, who came to their succor, shouting and slapping his arm in defiance. When the Daitya heard the noise, he turned upon his challenger, and fixing his eyes and pointing his horns at the belly of Keshava, he ran furiously upon the youth. Krishna stirred not from his post, but smiling in sport and in derision, awaited the near approach of the bull, when he seized him as a crocodile would have done, and held him firmly by the horns whilst he pressed his sides with his knees. Having thus humbled his pride and held him captive by his horns, he wrung his throat as if it had been a piece of wet cloth, and then tearing off one of the horns, he beat the fierce demon with it until he died, vomiting blood from his mouth. Seeing him slain, the herdsmen glorified Krishna, as the companies of the celestials of old praised Indra when he triumphed over the Asura Jambha. After these things had come to pass, Arishta the bull demon, and Dhenuka and Pralamba had been slain, Govardhana had been lifted up, the Kaliya Naga had been subdued, the 2 trees had been broken, the female fiend Putana had been killed, and the wagon had been overturned. Narada went to Kansa and related to him the whole, beginning with the transference of the child from Devaki to Yashoda. Hearing this from Narada, Kansa was highly incensed with Vasudeva, and bitterly reproached him and all the Yadavas in an assembly of the tribe. Then, reflecting what was to be done, he determined to destroy both Krishna and Rama whilst they were yet young, and before they had attained to their full manly vigor, for which purpose he resolved to invite them from Vraja under pretext of the solemn rite of the lustration of arms. Or, in other words, the lustration of arms, it's a military festival during which contests of weaponry and skill with weaponry and archery and such are held, the purpose being to bless the weapons. When he would engage them in a trial of strength with his chief boxers, Chanura and Mushtika, by whom they would assuredly be killed. I will send, he said, the noble Yadu, Akrura, the son of Svapalka, to Gokula to bring them hither. I will order the fierce Keshin, who haunts the woods of Vrindavan, to attack them, and he is of unequaled might, and will surely kill them. Or if they arrive here, my elephant Kuvalayapida shall trample to death these 2 cowboy sons of Vasudeva. Having thus laid his plans to destroy Rama and Janardana, the impious Kansa sent for the heroic Akrura and said to him, Dhanapati, Lord of liberal gifts, attend to my words, and out of friendship for me, perform my orders. Ascend your chariot and go hence to the station of the herdsman Nanda. 2 vile boys, portions of Vishnu, have been born there, for the express object of effecting my destruction. On the 14th lunation, in other words, this refers to on the full moon, on the 14th day of the moon's waxing, I have to celebrate the Dhanurmaha, the festival of arms. And I wish them to be brought here by you to take part in the games, and that the people may see them engage in a boxing match with my 2 dexterous athletes, Chanura and Mushtika. Or haply my elephant Kuvalayapida, driven against them by his rider, shall kill these 2 iniquitous youngsters, sons of Vasudeva. When they are out of the way, I will put to death Vasudeva himself, the cowherd Nanda, and my foolish father Ugrasena, and I will seize upon the herds and flocks and all the possessions of the rebellious Gopas who have ever been my foes. Except for you, O Dhanapati, all the Yadavas are hostile to me, but I will devise schemes for their extirpation. and I shall then reign over my kingdom in concert with you, without any annoyance. Through regard for me, therefore, do you go as I direct you, and you shall command the cowherds to bring in with speed their supplies of milk and butter and curds. Being thus instructed, the illustrious Akrura readily undertook to visit Krishna. And ascending his stately chariot, he went forth from the city of Mathura. Chapter 16. Keshin, confident in his prowess, having received the commands of Kansa, this is the demon Keshin, set off to the woods of Vrindavana with the intention to destroy Krishna. He came in the shape of a steed, a horse, spurning the earth with his hoofs, scattering the clouds with his mane, and springing in his paces beyond the orbits of the sun and moon. The cowherds and their females, hearing his neighings, were struck with terror and fled to Govinda for protection, calling upon him to save them. In a voice deep as the roaring of the thundercloud, Krishna replied to them, "Away with these fears of Keshin. Is the valor of a hero annihilated by your alarms? What is there to apprehend from one of such little might, whose neighings are his only terrors, a galloping and vicious steed who is ridden by the strength of the Daityas? Come on, wretch," he's now calling out to Keshin himself. "I am Krishna, and I will knock all thy teeth down thy throat, as the Trishuladhari did to Pushan." Thus defying him to combat, Govinda went to encounter Keshin. The demon ran upon him, with his mouth open wide, but Krishna, enlarging the bulk of his arm, thrust it into the demon's mouth and wrenched out his teeth, which fell from his jaws like fragments of white clouds. Still the arm of Krishna, in the throat of the demon, continued to enlarge, like a malady increasing from its commencement till it ends in death. From his torn lips, the demon vomited foam and blood, as his mouth being stretched wide is tearing open wider down his cheeks. His eyes rolled in agony, his joints gave way, he beat the earth with his feet, his body was covered with perspiration, he became incapable of any effort. The formidable demon, having his mouth rent open by the arm of Krishna, fell down, torn asunder like a tree struck by lightning. He lay separated into two portions, each having two legs, half a back, half a tail, one ear, one eye, one nostril. Krishna stood, unharmed and smiling, after tearing in half the demon, surrounded by the cowherds, who, together with their women, were filled with astonishment at the death of Keshin, and glorified the amiable god with the lotus eyes. Narada the Brahman, invisible, seated in a cloud, beheld the fall of Keshin, and delightedly exclaimed, "Well done, Lord of the universe, who in thy sports hast destroyed Keshin, the oppressors of the denizens of Svarga. Curious to behold this great combat between a man and a horse, such a one as was never before heard of, I have come from Svarga. Wonderful are the works that you have done, and thy avatarana upon the earth. They have excited my astonishment, but this above all has given me pleasure. Indra and the Devas lived in dread of this horse, who tossed his mane and neighed, and looked down upon the clouds. For this, that you have slain the impious Keshin, you shall be known in the world by the name of Keshava. Farewell, I will now depart. I shall meet you again, conqueror of Keshin, in 2 days more, in conflict with Kansa. When the son of Ugrasena with his followers shall have been slain, then, upholder of the earth, will earth's burdens have been lightened by you. Many are the battles of the kings that I have to see, in which you shall be renowned. I will now depart, Govinda. A great deed and acceptable to the gods has been done by you. I have been much delighted with you, and now take my leave." When Narada had gone, Krishna, not in any way surprised, returned with the Gopas to Gokula, the sole object of the eyes of the women of Raja. Chapter 17. Akrura, having set off in his quick traveling car, proceeded to visit Krishna at the pastures of Nanda, and as he went along, he congratulated himself on his superior good fortune, and having an opportunity of beholding a descended portion of the deity. Now, thought he, has my life borne fruit. My night is followed by the dawn of day, since I shall see the countenance of Vishnu, whose eyes are like the expanded leaf of the lotus. I shall behold that lotus-eyed aspect of Vishnu, which, when seen only in imagination, takes away the sins of men. I shall today behold that glory of glories, the mouth of Vishnu, whence proceeded the Vedas and all their angas, the Vedangas, or the dependent sciences of the Vedas. I shall see the sovereign of the world, by whom the world is sustained, who is worshipped as the Adipurusha, as the Yajna Purusha in sacrificial rites. I shall see Keshava, who is without beginning or end, by worshipping whom, with 100 yajnas, Indra obtained the sovereignty over the Devas. That Hari, whose nature is unknown to Brahma, Indra, Rudra, the Ashwins, the Vasus, Adityas, and Maruts, will this day touch my body. Soul of all, the knower of all, he who is all and is present in all, he who is permanent, undecaying, all-pervading, will converse with me. He, the unborn, who has preserved the world in the various forms of a fish, a turtle, a boar, a horse, a lion, will this day speak to me. Now the Lord of the earth, who assumes shapes at will, has taken upon him the condition of humanity, to accomplish some object cherished in his heart. That Ananta, who holds the earth upon his crest and who has descended upon earth for its protection, will this day call me by my name. Glory to that being whose deceptive adoption of father, son, brother, friend, mother, and relative the world is unable to penetrate. Glory to him who is one with true knowledge, who is inscrutable, and through whom, seated in his heart, the yogi crosses the wide expanse of worldly ignorance and illusion. I bow to him who, by the performers of holy rites, is called the Yajna Purusha. By pious worshippers is termed Vasudeva, and by the cultivators of philosophy, Vishnu. May he in whom cause and effect and the world itself is comprehended be propitious to me through his truth. For always do I put my trust in that unborn eternal Hari, by meditation on whom man becomes the repository of all good things. His mind thus animated by devout faith, and meditating in this manner, Akrura proceeded on his road, and arrived at Gokula a little before sunset, at the time of the milking of the cows, and there he saw Krishna amongst the cattle, dark as the leaf of the full-blown blue lotus, his eyes of the same color, and his breast decorated with the Srivatsa mark, long-armed and broad-chested, having a high nose and a lovely countenance, brightened with mirthful smiles, treading firmly on the ground, with feet whose nails were tinted red, clad in yellow garments and adorned with a garland of forest flowers, having a fresh gathered creeper in his hand, and a chaplet of white lotus flowers on his head. Akrura also beheld there Balabhadra, white as a jasmine, a swan or the moon, and dressed in blue raiment, having large and powerful arms, and a countenance as radiant as a lotus in bloom, like another Mount Kailasa, crested with a wreath of clouds. When Akrura saw these two youths, his countenance expanded with delight, and the hair of his body stood erect with pleasure. For this he thought to be supreme happiness and glory. This the double manifestation of the divine Vasudeva. This was the twofold gratification of his sight, to behold the creator of the universe. Now he hoped that his bodily form would yield fruit, as it would bring him in contact with the body of Krishna, and that the wearer of infinite forms would place his hand on his back, the touch of whose finger alone is sufficient to dispel sin, and to secure imperishable felicity. That hand which launches the fierce irresistible discus, blazing with all the flames of fire, lightning, and the sun, and slaughtering the demon host, washes the collyrium from the eyes of their brides. That hand into which Bali poured water, and thence obtained ineffable enjoyments below the earth, and immortality and dominion over the gods for a whole manvantara, without peril from any foe. Alas, he will despise me for my connection with Kamsa, Akrura worried at the last moment, and associate with evil, though not contaminated by it. How vain is his birth who is shunned by the virtuous, and yet what is there in this world unknown to him who resides in the hearts of all men, who is ever existent, exempt from imperfection, the aggregate of the quality of purity, and identical with true knowledge. With a heart wholly devoted to him, then, I will approach the Lord of all lords, the descended portion of Purushottama, of Vishnu, who is without beginning, middle, or end. Thus meditating, the Yadava Akrura approached Govinda and addressed him and said, I am Akrura, and bowed his head down to the feet of Hari, while Krishna laid upon him his hand, which was marked with the flag, the thunderbolt, and the lotus. These are marks on the palm of Krishna's hand, and drew him towards him and affectionately embraced him. Then Keshava and Rama entered into conversation with him, and having heard from him all that had occurred, were much pleased, and led him to their habitation. There they resumed their discourse and gave him food to eat and treated him with proper hospitality. Akrura told them how their father, Anakalundhubi, the princess Devaki, and even his own father Ugrasena had been insulted by the iniquitous demon Kansa. He also related to them the purpose for which he had been dispatched. When he had told them all these things, the destroyer of Kashin said to him, I was aware of all that you have told me, Lord of liberal gifts. Rama and I will go tomorrow to Mathura along with you. The elders of the cowherds shall accompany us, bearing ample offerings. Rest here tonight and dismiss all anxiety. Within 3 nights from now, I will slay Kansa and his adherents. Having given orders accordingly to the cowherds, Akrura with Keshava and Rama retired to rest and slept soundly in the dwelling of Nanda. The next morning was bright, and the youths prepared to depart for Mathura with Akrura. The gopis, seeing them about to set forth, were much afflicted. They wept bitterly. Their bracelets were loose upon their arms, and they thus communed together. If Govinda depart from Mathura, how will he return to Gokula? His ears will there be regaled with the melodious and polished conversation of the women of the city. Accustomed to the language of the graceful females of Mathura, he will never again endure the rustic expressions of us gopis. Hari, the pride of the station, is carried off, and a fatal blow is inflicted upon us by inexorable destiny. Expressive smiles, soft language, graceful airs, elegant gait, and significant glances belong to the women of the city. Hari is of rustic breeding, and captivated by their fascinations, what likelihood is there of his returning to the society of any one amongst us? Keshava, who has mounted the car to go to Mathura, has been deceived by the cruel, vile, and desperate Akrura. Does not the unfeeling traitor know the affection that we all here feel for our Hari, the joy of our eyes, that he is taking him away? Unkind that he is, Govinda is departing from us along with Rama. Haste, let us stop him. Why talk of telling our seniors that we cannot bear his loss? What can they do for us when we are consumed by the fires of separation? The Gopas, with Nanda at their head, are themselves preparing to depart. No one makes any attempt to detain Govinda. Bright is the morning that succeeds to this night for the women of Mathura, for the bees of their eyes will feed upon the lotus face of Achyuta. Happy are they who may go hence without impediment and behold enraptured Krishna on his journey. A great festival will give pleasure today to the eyes of the inhabitants of Mathura when they see the person of Govinda. What a blissful vision will be seen by the happy women of the city, whose brilliant eyes shall regard unchecked the countenance of Krishna. Alas, the eyes of the gopis have been deprived of sight by the relentless Brahma, after he had shown them this great treasure. In proportion as the affection of Hari for us decays, so do our limbs wither, and the bracelets slip from our arms. And now the cruel Akrura urges on the horses. All conspire to treat us unhappy females with unkindness. Alas, alas, we see now only the dust of his chariot wheels, and now he is far away, for even that dust is no longer to be seen. Thus lamented by the women, Keshava and Rama quitted the district of Raja. Traveling in a car drawn by fleet horses, they arrived at noon at the banks of the river Yamuna, when Akrura requested them to halt a little whilst he performed the usual daily ceremonial in the river, this being the noonday Sandhya prayer. Accordingly, the intelligent Akrura bathed and rinsed his mouth, and then entering the stream, he stood meditating upon the Supreme Being. But he beheld mentally Balabhadra, having 1,000 hooded heads, a garland of jasmine flowers, and large red eyes, attended by Vasuki, Rambha, and other mighty Nagas, praised by the Gandharvas decorated with wildflowers, wearing dark-colored garments, crowned with a chaplet of lotuses, ornamented with brilliant earrings, inebriate, and standing at the bottom of the river in the water. On his lap, he also beheld at his ease Krishna, of the complexion of a cloud, in other words, called Ghanashyama, or dark blue as a water-laden monsoon cloud, with full and coppery eyes, having an elegant form and 4 hands, armed with the discus and other weapons, wearing yellow clothes, decorated with many colored flowers, and appearing like a cloud embellished with streams of lightning and the bow of Indra, the Indradhanush, or the rainbow. His breast was marked with the celestial sign, the Srivatsa. His arms were radiant with bracelets. A diadem shone on his brow, and he wore a white lotus for his crest. He was attended by Sanandana and other holy sages, who, fixing their eyes upon the tips of their noses, were absorbed in profound meditation. When Akrura beheld Balarama and Krishna in this situation, he was much amazed, and wondered how they could so quickly have got there from the chariot. He wished to ask them this, but Janardana deprived him of the faculty of speech at the moment. Ascending then from the water, he repaired to the car, and there he found them both quietly seated in the same human persons as before. Plunging again into the water, there he again beheld them, hymned as before by the Gandharvas, saints, sages, and Nagas. Apprehending therefore their real character, he thus eulogized the eternal deity who consists of true knowledge. Salutation to you, who is uniform and manifold, all-pervading supreme spirit of inconceivable glory, and who are simple existence. Salutation to you, O inscrutable, who are truth and the essence of oblations. Salutation to you, O Lord, whose nature is unknown, who is beyond primeval matter, who exist in 5 forms as one with the elements, with the faculties, with matter, with the living soul, with supreme spirit. Show favor to me, O soul of the universe, essence of all things, perishable or eternal, whether addressed by the designation of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, or their like. I adore you, O God, whose nature is indescribable, whose purposes are inscrutable, whose true name even is unknown, for the attributes of kind or appellation are not applicable to you, who is Tad, who is that, the supreme Brahman, eternal, unchangeable, uncreated. But as the accomplishment of our object cannot be attained except through some specific form, you are termed by us Krishna, Achyuta, Ananta, or Vishnu. You, unborn divinity, are all the objects of these impersonations. You are the gods and all other beings. You are the whole world. You are all. Soul of the universe, you are exempt from change, and there is nothing except you in all this existence. You are Brahma, Pashupati, Aryaman, Dhatri, and Vidhatri. You are Indra, Vayu, Agni, Varuna, Kubera, and Yama. And you, although but one, preside over the world with various energies, addressed to various purposes. You, identical with the solar ray, create the universe. All elementary substance is composed of thy qualities, and thy supreme form is denoted by the imperishable term Sat, or existence. To him who is one with true knowledge, who is and is not perceptible, I bow. Glory be to him, the Lord Vasudeva, to Sankarshana, to Pradyumna, and to Aniruddha. Thus the Yadava Akrura, standing in the river, praised Krishna and worshipped him with imaginary incense and flowers. Disregarding all other objects, he fixed his whole mind upon the deity, and having continued for a long time in spiritual contemplation, he at last desisted from his abstraction, conceiving that he had effected the purposes of his soul. Coming up from the water of the Yamuna, he went to the car, and there beheld Rama and Krishna seated as before. As his looks denoted surprise, Krishna said to him, "Surely, Akrura, you have seen some marvel in the stream of the Yamuna, for your eyes are staring as if with astonishment. Akrura replied, the marvel that I have seen in the stream of the Yamuna I behold before me even here in a bodily shape. For he whom I have encountered in the water, Krishna, is your wondrous self, of whose illustrious person the whole world is the miraculous development. But enough of this. Let us proceed to Mathura. I'm afraid Kamsa will be angry at our delay. Such is the wretched consequence of eating the bread of another. Thus speaking, he urged on the quick horses, and they arrived after sunset at Mathura. When they came in sight of the city, Akrura said to Krishna and Rama, you must now journey on foot, whilst I proceed alone in the car, and you must not go to the house of Vasudeva, for the elder has been banished by Kamsa on your account. Akrura, having thus spoken, left them and entered the city, whilst Rama and Krishna continued to walk along the royal road. Regarded with pleasure by men and women, they went along sportively, looking like two young elephants. As they roamed about, they saw a washerman coloring clothes, and with smiling countenances they went and threw down some of his fine linen. The washerman was the servant of Kamsa, made insolent by his master's favor, and he provoked the two lads with loud and scurrilous abuse, until Krishna struck him down with his head to the ground and killed him. Then, taking the clothes, they went their way, clad in yellow and blue raiment, until they came to a flower seller's shop. The flower seller looked at them with astonishment, and wondered who they could be, or whence they could have come. Seeing two youths so lovely, dressed in yellow and blue garments, he imagined them to be divinities descended upon earth. Being addressed by them with mouths budding like lotuses, and asked for some flowers, he placed his hands upon the ground and touched it with his head, saying, touched the ground with his head at their feet, saying, my lords have shown me great kindness in coming to my house. Fortunate that I am, I will pay them homage. Having thus spoken, the flower seller, with a smiling aspect, gave them whatever choice flowers they selected to conciliate their favor. Repeatedly prostrating himself before them, he presented them with flowers beautiful, fragrant, and fresh. Krishna then, being much pleased with him, gave him this blessing. Fortune, good friend, who depends upon me, shall never forsake you. Never shall you suffer loss of vigor or loss of wealth. As long as time shall last, your descendants shall not fail. Having long tasted various delights on earth, you shall finally obtain, by calling me to recollection, a heavenly region, the consequence of my favor. Your heart shall ever be intent on righteousness, and fullness of days shall be the portion of your posterity. Your descendants shall not be subject to natural infirmities, as long as the sun shall endure. Having thus spoken, Krishna and Rama, worshipped by the flower seller, went forth from his dwelling. As they proceeded along the high road, they saw coming towards them a young girl who was crooked, carrying a pot of unguent. Crooked as in physically deformed. Krishna addressed her sportively and said, for whom are you carrying that unguent? Tell me, lovely maiden, tell me truly. Spoken to, as it were, through affection, Kubja, her name was Kubja, well disposed towards Hari, replied to him also mirthfully, being smitten by his appearance. Know you not, beloved, that I am the servant of Kamsa, and appointed, crooked as I am, to prepare his perfumes? Unguent ground by any other he does not approve of, hence I am enriched through his liberal rewards. Then said Krishna, fair-faced damsel, give us of this unguent, fragrant and fit for kings, as much as we may rub upon our bodies. Take it, answered Kubja, and she gave them as much of the unguent as was sufficient for their persons, and they rubbed it on various parts of their faces and bodies. This is the smearing of the bodies in the style called Bhakti Cheda, meaning there's certain marks of the Vaishnavas, streaks of red color on the forehead, the nose, the cheeks, the chest, and the arms. So that's specifically the unguent that she's applying on them. Till they looked like two clouds, one white and one dark, decorated by the many-tinted bow of Indra. Then Krishna, skilled in the curative art, took hold of her under the chin with the thumb and two fingers, and lifted up her head whilst with his feet he pressed down her feet, and in this way he made her straight. When she was thus relieved from her deformity, she was a most beautiful woman, and filled with gratitude and affection, she took Govinda by the garment and invited him to her house. Promising to come at some other time, Krishna smilingly dismissed her, and then laughed aloud on beholding the countenance of Baladeva. Dressed in blue and yellow garments and anointed with fragrant unguents, Keshava and Rama proceeded to the hall of arms, which was hung round with garlands. Inquiring of the warders which bow he was to try, and being directed to it, he took it and bent it, but drawing it with violence, he snapped the bow in two. And all Mathura resounded with the noise which its fracture occasioned. Abused by the warders for breaking the bow, Krishna and Rama retorted and defied them and left the hall. When Kansa knew that Akrura had returned and heard that the bow had been broken, he thus said to Chanura and Mushtaka, his boxers, "Two youths, cowherd boys, have arrived. You must kill them both in a trial of strength in my presence, for they practice against my life. I shall be well pleased if you kill them in the match, and will give you whatever you wish. Not else. These two foes of mine must be killed by you, fairly or unfairly. The kingdom shall be ours in common when they have perished." Having given them these orders, he sent next for his elephant driver, and desired him to station his great elephant Kuvalayapida, who was as vast as a cloud charged with rain, near the gate of the arena, and to drive him upon the two boys when they should attempt to enter. When Kansa had issued these commands, and ascertained that the platforms were all ready for the spectators, he awaited the rising of the sun, unconscious of his impending death. In the morning, the citizens assembled on the platform set apart for them, and the princes, with the ministers and courtiers, occupied the royal seats. Near the center of the circle, judges of the games were stationed by Kansa, whilst he himself sat apart close by upon a lofty throne. Separate platforms were erected for the ladies of the palace, for the courtesans, and for the wives of the citizens. Nanda and the cowherds had places appropriated to them, at the end of which sat Akrura and Vasudeva. Amongst the wives of the citizens appeared Devaki, mourning for her son, whose lovely face she longed to behold even in the hour of his destruction, since, of course, she fears that he is about to die. When the musical instrument sounded, Chanura sprang forth, and the people cried, "Alas!" and Mushtaka slapped his arms in defiance. Covered with must and blood from the elephant, whom when goaded upon them by his driver they had slain, and armed with his tusks, Balabhadra and Janardana confidently entered the arena, like two lions amidst a herd of deer. Exclamations of pity arose from all the spectators, along with expressions of astonishment. "This, then," said the people, "is Krishna, this is Balabhadra, this is he by whom the fierce night walker Putana was slain, by whom the wagon was overturned, the two Arjuna trees felled. This is the boy who trampled and danced on the Naga Kaliya, who upheld the mountain Govardhana for 7 nights, who killed as if in play the iniquitous Arishta, Dhenuka, and Keshin. This whom we see is Achyuta. This is he who has been foretold by the wise, skilled in descents to the Puranas, as Gopala, who shall exalt the depressed Yadava race. This is a portion of the all-existing, all-generating Vishnu, descended upon earth, who will assuredly lighten her load." Thus did the citizens describe Rama and Krishna as soon as they appeared, whilst the breast of Devaki glowed with maternal affection, and Vasudeva, forgetting his infirmities, felt himself young again, on beholding the countenances to his sons as a season of rejoicing. The women of the palace and the wives of the citizens opened wide their eyes and gazed intently upon Krishna. "Look, friends," said they to their companions, "look at the face of Krishna. His eyes are reddened by his conflict with the elephant, and the drops of perspiration stand upon his cheeks, outvying a full-blown lotus in autumn, studded with glittering dew. Avail yourself now of the faculty of vision. Observe his breast, the seat of splendor marked with the mystic sign, and his arms menacing destruction to his foes. Do you not see Balabhadra dressed in a blue garment, his countenance as fair as the jasmine, as the moon, as the fibers of the lotus seen? See how he gently smiles at the gestures of Mushtika and Chanura as they spring up. And now behold Hari advance to encounter Chanura. What, are there no elders, judges of the field? How can the delicate form of Hari, only yet in the dawn of adolescence, be regarded as a match for the vast and adamantine bulk of the great demon? 2 youths of light and elegant persons are in the arena to oppose athletic fiends headed by the cruel Chanura. This is a great sin in the judges of the games, for the umpires to suffer a contest between boys and strong men. As thus the women of the city conversed with one another, Hari, having tightened his girdle, danced in the ring, shaking the ground on which he trod. Balabhadra also danced, slapping his arms in defiance. For the ground was firm, the invincible Krishna contended foot to foot with Chanura. The practiced demon Mushtika was opposed by Balabhadra. Mutually entwining and pushing and pulling and beating each other with fists, arms, and elbows, striking each other with their knees, interlacing their arms, kicking with their feet, pressing with their whole weight upon one another. Fought Hari and Chanura. Desperate was the struggle, though without weapons, and one for life and death, to the great gratification of the spectators. In proportion as the contest continued, so Chanura was gradually losing something of his original vigor, and the wreath upon his head trembled from his fury and distress. Whilst the world-comprehending Krishna wrestled with him as if but in sport. Beholding Chanura losing, and Krishna gaining strength, Kansa, furious with rage, commanded the music to cease. As soon as the drums and trumpets were silenced, a numerous band of heavenly instruments was heard in the sky, and the gods invisibly exclaimed, "Victory to Govinda! Keshava killed the demon Chanura." Madhusudana, having for a long time dallied with his adversary, at last lifted him up and whirled him round with the intention of putting an end to him. Having whirled Chanura round 100 times until his breath was expended in the air, Krishna dashed him on the ground with such violence as to smash his body into 100 fragments and strew the earth with 100 pools of gory mire. Whilst this took place, the mighty Baladeva was engaged in the same manner with the demon bruiser Mushtika, striking him on the head with his fists and on the breast with his knees. He stretched him on the ground and pummeled him there till he was dead. Again, Krishna encountered the royal bruiser Tomalaka and felled him to the earth with a blow of his left hand. When the other athletes saw Chanura Mushtika and Tomalaka killed, they fled from the field, and Krishna and Sankarsana danced victorious on the arena, dragging along with them by force the cowherds of their own age. Kansa, his eyes reddening with wrath, called aloud to the surrounding people, "Drive those 2 cowboys out of the assembly. Seize the villain Nanda and secure him with chains of iron. Put Vasudeva to death with tortures intolerable to his years, and lay hands upon the cattle and whatever else belongs to those cowherds who are the associates of Krishna." Upon hearing these orders, the destroyer of Madhu laughed at Kansa, and springing up to the place where he was seated, laid hold of him by the hair of his head and struck his crown to the ground. Then, casting him down upon the earth, Govinda threw himself upon him. Crushed by the weight of the upholder of the universe, the son of Ugrasena, Kansa the king, gave up the ghost under Krishna's feet. Krishna then dragged the dead body by the hair of the head into the center of the arena, and a deep furrow was made by the vast and heavy carcass of Kansa as it was dragged along the ground by Krishna, as if a torrent of water had ran through it. Seeing Kansa thus treated, his brother Sumalin came to his succor. but he was encountered and easily killed by Balabhadra. Then arose a general cry of grief from the surrounding circle, as they beheld the king of Mathura thus slain and treated with such contempt by Krishna. Krishna, accompanied by Balabhadra, embraced the feet of Vasudeva and of Devaki, but Vasudeva raised him up, and he and Devaki, recalling to recollection what he had said to them at his birth, they bowed to Janardana. And Vasudeva addressed him, "Have compassion upon mortals, O God, benefactor and lord of deities. It is by thy favor to us too that you have become the upholder of the world. That for the punishment of the rebellious, you have descended upon earth in my house, having been propitiated by my prayers, sanctifies our race. You are the heart of all creatures, you abide in all creatures, and all that has been or will be emanates from you, O universal spirit. You, Achyuta, who comprise all the gods, are eternally worshipped with yajnas. You are yajna itself and the yajamana, the offerer of yajna. The affection that inspires my heart and the heart of Devaki towards you is, if you were our child, as if you were our child, is indeed but error and a great delusion. How shall the tongue of a mortal such as I am call the creator of all things, who is without beginning or end, son? Is it consistent that the Lord of the world, from whom the world proceeds, should be born of me, except through illusion? How should he in whom all fixed and movable things are contained be conceived in the womb and born of a mortal being? Have compassion, therefore, indeed, O Supreme Lord, and in thy descended portions protect the universe. You are no son of mine. This whole world, from Brahma to a tree, you are. Wherefore do you, who are one with the Supreme, beguile us? Blinded with delusion, I thought you my son, and for you who are beyond all fear, I dreaded the anger of Kansa, and therefore did I take you in my terror to Gokula, where you have grown up. But I no longer claim you as mine own. You, Vishnu, the sovereign of all, whose actions Rudra, the Maruts, the Ashvins, Indra, and the gods cannot equal, although they behold them. You who has come among us for the benefit of the world are recognized, and delusion is no more. And I think that's a good place to stop. The following chapters get into the aftermath and Krishna setting right the affairs of Mathura and the Yadava clan and so on. But that was the climax of the first main arc of his youthful Leelas.
Fascinating. I find also interesting the parallels with the Ramayana in terms of Akrura living in the city with Kamsa, like Vibhishan, who was the brother of Ravana. And also the breaking of the bow is in both of these. So the ability to bend the two extremes of I guess one could say reality, the silence and the dynamism and being symbolic of that.
Yes.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah. Thank you guys very much for coming.
Namaste.
Namaste. Jai Shri Krishna.
Thank you, Deva. Jai Shri Krishna.